When a man who thought he was God's gift to corporate America walked into my office, I knew I'd lose something precious. My job, my dignity, maybe even my sanity. But what he didn't know was that everything he'd steal from me would become the very fuel for his destruction. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine served in a boardroom, with a $120 million price tag and a side of public humiliation. My name is Madeline Harper, and for 12 years, I was the operational strategy specialist who kept Orion Apex Solutions from imploding on itself. 36 years old, with a mind sharp enough to slice through corporate bullshit and a reputation solid enough to make C-suite executives actually listen when I spoke. That's not arrogance talking, that's just fact. Backed by quarterly reports that sang my praises in numbers too beautiful to ignore. Our 42nd floor office was a monument to efficiency before he arrived. Glass walls that let natural light flood every corner. Open collaboration spaces where ideas flowed like premium coffee. And an energy that hummed with purpose. My corner office, yes, I'd earned that corner office, overlooked the city's financial district. A daily reminder that we weren't just pushing papers, we were moving mountains of money with every strategic decision. The team respected competence, not chromosomes. When I walked into a meeting, nobody saw a woman first. They saw the person who'd saved 3 major accounts from walking and restructured our Pacific operations to increase efficiency by 37%. My colleagues, Marcus from acquisitions, Jennifer from legal, even stone-faced Richardson from compliance, we were a machine, each cog precisely calibrated to mesh with the others. Then came the announcement. Our CEO, in his infinite wisdom, decided we needed fresh leadership to navigate the evolving marketplace. Translation, his golf buddy needed a cushy position. And our department was the sacrificial lamb. I'll never forget the first time I saw Rexley Vaughn. He strutted through our floor like a peacock who'd gotten an MBA from a cereal box. Immaculate suit that screamed, "I bill this to the company." Hair slicked back with enough product to grease a small engine, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Eyes that swept over the female staff like we were furniture. Lingered on the men, like they were the only ones worth acknowledging. "Team," he announced in our first all-hands meeting, his voice dripping with the kind of artificial enthusiasm you'd expect from a motivational poster that became sentient. "We're going to revolutionize our approach. Think disruption. Think innovation. Think outside the proverbial box until there is no box." Marcus caught my eye and mouthed, "Bingo." We'd started a buzzword drinking game within 5 minutes. If only I'd known that would be the last time we'd laugh together in that conference room. The red flags started small, like droplets before a flood. He rearranged the office layout within his first week, moving the women's desks to what he cheerfully called the collaboration zone, a frigid corner near the server room where the AC blasted Arctic air and the Wi-Fi barely functioned. The men stayed in the warm, window-lined areas, suddenly blessed with new ergonomic chairs and dual monitors. "Studies show," Rexley explained when Jennifer questioned the change, "that different temperaments thrive in different environments. It's all about optimization." The study he cited didn't exist. I checked, but I still had my corner office, still had my projects, still had my dignity. I thought I could weather this storm like I'd weathered every other corporate tempest. Head down, work stellar, results undeniable. How naive, how utterly, pathetically naive. The erosion of my authority happened with surgical precision. Each cut calculated to bleed me slowly, rather than kill me outright. First, Rexley started sitting in on my client calls, not participating, just lurking in the corner like a badly dressed vulture, occasionally humming disapproval when I spoke. Then came the CCs on every email, his responses always arriving seconds after mine, subtly contradicting my recommendations with phrases like, "While Madeline's approach has merit, perhaps we should consider a more robust strategy." Robust, his favorite word. Everything needed to be more robust, more aggressive, more masculine. Week 3 brought the project reassignments. The Steinberg account I'd nurtured for 5 years suddenly needed fresh eyes. The Pacific Rim expansion I'd architected required someone with killer instinct. One by one, my babies were ripped from my arms and handed to men who couldn't tell a profit margin from a margarine tub. It's nothing personal. Madeline, Rexley assured me during one of his ambush meetings. He never scheduled them, just appeared in my office like a bad rash. I just think your talents are better suited to processing. You're such an incredible processing machine. Processing machine, not strategist, not specialist. Machine. I'm a strategic operations specialist, I corrected him, my voice steady despite the rage boiling in my chest. I've generated $47 million in retained revenue for this company. He laughed, actually laughed, and perched on my desk, his cologne assault making my eyes water. See, that's what I love about you people, always so focused on the past. But business is about the future, sweetheart. You people, sweetheart. The weekly leadership meetings became my personal hell. Where I once presented comprehensive strategies, I now sat silent while Rexley mansplained my own proposals back to me. Edited beyond recognition. He'd literally take my reports, slap his name on them, then present them as revolutionary thinking while I sat there, invisible, a ghost haunting my own career. But the Tuesday meeting in November, that's when he said it. The words that should have been recorded should have been witnessed by HR, but conveniently weren't because he'd dismissed everyone except his hand-picked boys' club. We were discussing the Morrison Industries pitch, a $100 million opportunity I'd been cultivating for 18 months. I'd mapped out every stakeholder, every pain point, every possible objection and counter strategy. I'll take point on this, Rexley announced, shuffling through my meticulously prepared materials. Morrison's CEO is old school, likes to deal man to man. I've been working with Morrison's team for Madeline. He held up his hand like he was training a dog. Let me be crystal clear, because apparently subtlety is lost on you. Women can't close deals like this. You don't have the balls, literally or figuratively, to play hardball with the big boys. It's not sexism, it's biology. Men are hunters. Women are, well, you're good at other things. Supporting things. Processing things. The room went silent. Even his loyal lieutenants shifted uncomfortably. That's blatant discrimination, I said quietly. That's reality. He shot back. And if you can't handle reality, maybe you should consider whether this position is really right for you. There are plenty of roles in HR or marketing where your softer skills would be appreciated. Marcus looked like he wanted to speak up, but Rexley's glare shut him down. Jennifer was conveniently traveling that week. Richardson studied his phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. I documented everything in an email to myself that night, BCCing my personal account. But what good is documentation when the entire system is designed to protect men like Rexley? When HR reports to the same CEO who gifted him this position. The final insult came when he moved my office. Not to another corner, to a cubicle. A fucking cubicle wedged between the printer room and the emergency exit, where every door slam and paper jam became my personal soundtrack. Space optimization, he explained cheerfully. Your old office is better suited for client entertainment. His golf bag moved in that afternoon. The pink slip arrived on a Thursday at 4:47 p.m., delivered by Rexley himself with the kind of smile you'd see on a cat presenting a dead bird. Restructuring, he said, sliding the termination letter across my cubicle's pathetic excuse for a desk. Nothing personal, but we need people who can adapt to our new dynamic culture. Dynamic culture. Translation. Penis required for admission. 2 weeks severance, he continued, already turning away. Security will escort you out once you've packed. Company policy for terminated employees. Can't have anyone stealing proprietary information. The irony of that statement would hit me exactly 13 minutes later. I packed in silence while Brad from security, sweet, apologetic Brad who kept muttering, "This is bullshit," watched me dump 12 years into a cardboard box. My awards, my coffee mug. The stress ball shaped like a brain that Jennifer gave me last Christmas. Each item felt like a small death, a piece of my identity being stripped away. That's when I saw it. Rexley's office, my former office, had its door ajar, and his printer was running. Stacks of papers sat on his desk, and even from across the floor. I recognized the distinctive formatting. My formatting. The color-coded sections, the risk matrices in the appendices, the signature bullet point structure I'd perfected over years. "Brad, I need to use the bathroom," I said. "Female troubles." He turned red and practically fled to wait by the elevators. God bless male discomfort with menstruation. I slipped into Rexley's office like a thief reclaiming stolen goods. The documents on his desk made my blood freeze. It was the Falcon Protocol. My Falcon Protocol. The comprehensive operational overhaul I'd designed 5 years ago. A beautiful but dangerous strategy that could revolutionize a company's infrastructure or destroy it completely if implemented wrong. I'd buried it in the archives with more red flags than a communist parade. High risk, do not implement without comprehensive safeguards was stamped across every page of the original. But Rexley's version, clean, sanitized. All warnings removed, all risk assessments deleted, all safeguards erased. And there, clipped to the top, was a meeting agenda. Meridian West Group, final presentation, Falcon Protocol implementation, 120 meters, contract. Meridian West, our biggest client? A company that trusted us with their entire operational infrastructure because they trusted our integrity. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything, every page, every edited section, every place where he'd surgically removed my warnings. The metadata would prove these were recent modifications. The version control would show my original timestamps. But the crown jewel was his handwritten notes in the margins. Remove liability concerns, too negative. Delete risk section, scares clients. Madeline's paranoia not needed. My paranoia. The bastard called my professional risk assessment paranoia while preparing to sell a corporate time bomb to our biggest client. A sound in the hallway made me freeze. Voices approaching. I grabbed one more crucial piece of evidence, the email printout where he'd instructed IT to transfer all my files to his server for review, and slipped out through the other door. Brad was still by the elevators, checking his phone. I returned to my cubicle, tucked the photos into my personal phone, and finished packing with shaking hands. "All done," I called to Brad, my voice surprisingly steady. As we walked to the elevator, I passed the wall of corporate values. Integrity mocked me in bold letters. Transparency laughed in my face. Respect might as well have been written in invisible ink. Rexley appeared just as the elevator doors opened, probably to gloat one last time. "Best of luck, Madeline. I'm sure you'll find something more suitable." I looked him straight in the eye, memorizing every pore of his smug face. "Oh, I'm sure I will. After all, when one door closes, another opens," he finished, clearly missing the ice in my voice. "No," I said as the elevator doors began to close. "When one door closes, sometimes you burn down the whole fucking building." The last thing I saw was his confused expression before the doors sealed shut. In the parking garage, sitting in my car with a box of my professional life in the back seat, I stared at the photos on my phone. Rexley thought he'd won. He thought he'd successfully pushed out another woman who wouldn't play by his rules. But he'd made one critical error. He'd stolen from me. And worse, he'd put his name on it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Heard about what happened. This is Sophie Durant from Meridian West. We should talk." S. Sophie Durant, COO of Meridian West. My old colleague from my consulting days, before Orion Apex. I typed back, "When and where?" Her response was immediate. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the Violet Cafe on 5th. Come alone. And Madeline? Bring everything." Everything. Oh. Sophie? You have no idea what everything means. The Violet Cafe sat tucked between a vintage bookstore and a jewelry repair shop, the kind of place where deals that shaped industries were whispered over artisanal lattes. Sophie had chosen well: private booths, no corporate crowd, and most importantly, no chance of Orion Apex executives accidentally wandering in. She was already there when I arrived, occupying a corner booth with sightlines to both entrances. 5 years had added silver streaks to her black hair and sharpened her already keen eyes. Sophie Durant didn't just climb corporate ladders, she built her own and charged others admission to use them. Madeline. She stood, embracing me briefly. You look like hell. Unemployment doesn't suit me, I said, sliding into the booth. But something tells me you didn't reach out to discuss my skincare routine. Sophie smiled, that predatory expression I remembered from when we'd worked together to salvage the Brennan acquisition. Straight to business. I always loved that about you. She pulled out a tablet, angling it so only we could see the screen. Rexley Vaughn presented this to our board yesterday. The Falcon Protocol stared back at me from her screen, dressed up in Orion Apex's latest presentation template. My work, my words, my strategies, all with his name plastered across every slide like graffiti on a masterpiece. Impressive proposal, Sophie continued, watching my face carefully. Revolutionary, even. Promise to transform our entire operational infrastructure, reduce costs by 40%, increase efficiency by 60%. The board was ready to sign on the spot. Was. I caught the past tense. I've been in this business for 20 years. Madeline. I know when something's too good to be true. And I know your work when I see it. She pulled up another document. This risk assessment style, these matrix formulations, you taught me these techniques yourself during the Brennan deal. My coffee arrived, giving me a moment to compose myself. Sophie waited, patient as a spider. It's mine, I said finally. The Falcon Protocol. I designed it 5 years ago. But it's incomplete. He stripped out all the safeguards. It's like selling someone a race car with no brakes. I suspected as much. Sophie leaned back. The presentation felt sanitized. Rexley couldn't answer basic implementation questions, kept deflecting to proprietary methodology. Then I heard about your sudden termination, and the pieces clicked. She opened another file, an email chain between Rexley and her CEO. He's pushing hard for us to sign before month's end. Says he has other interested parties, but he's giving us preferred consideration given our relationship. There are no other parties, I said. He can't shop this around too much or someone will recognize it's stolen. Meridian West is his one shot at the big score. That's what I thought. Sophie's smile turned sharp. Here's the thing. Madeline, I need this deal to not happen. But I can't just spike it without cause. Our CEO is enamored with the projections. The board sees dollar signs. I need concrete proof that this is both stolen and dangerous. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos. How's this for concrete? For the next 30 minutes, I walked her through everything. The original documents with my timestamps, the warnings Rexley had deleted, the implementation safeguards he'd removed, the email where he'd admitted to stripping out my paranoia. Sophie's expression grew darker with each revelation. This isn't just theft. If we implemented this without the safeguards, system-wide failure within 6 months, I confirmed. Maybe sooner. The protocol works, but it's like performing surgery. You need every step, every precaution, or the patient dies. The patient being our entire company. Exactly. Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she looked at me with an expression I'd seen before, the look she got when she was about to declare war. I want to hire you, she said. Consulting basis. Off the books for now. I need a complete analysis of what Rexley's presenting versus what should actually be implemented. Every risk, every safeguard, every single thing he's hiding. Sophie, I can't be seen working with you. If Rexley finds out, he won't. She slid a business card across the table, not hers, a lawyer's. This is my personal attorney. Everything goes through him, attorney-client privilege. You'll be listed as an expert witness in a potential corporate liability case. You're building a case? I'm building a weapon, Sophie corrected. Rexley Vaughn walked into my house trying to sell me a bomb. Now I'm going to shove that bomb so far up his ass, he'll be tasting C4 for years. I laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in months. That's almost poetic. It's practical. He's a threat to my company. And he made the mistake of underestimating both of us. Sophie raised her coffee cup. So, are you in? I thought about Rexley's smug face, his dismissive words, the way he'd erased me from my own work. I thought about the cubicle by the printer, the boys' club meetings, the systematic destruction of everything I'd built. I'm in, I said, clinking my cup against hers. But Sophie, I don't just want him to fail. I want him to know I'm the reason why. Sophie's grin was pure shark. Oh, honey. By the time we're done, he'll know exactly who pulled the trigger. Working from the shadows felt like being a ghost with a purpose, invisible, intangible, but capable of moving pieces on a board my enemy couldn't even see. Sophie had set me up in a secure workspace at her attorney's office, a windowless room that became my war room. 3 monitors, encrypted connections, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. I became nocturnal, living in the space between Rexley's lies and the truth he'd buried. Every document got the forensic treatment. I mapped out what he'd stolen, what he'd altered, and most crucially, what would happen when his bastardized version met reality. The original Falcon protocol was my masterpiece, a complete operational overhaul that required precise sequencing. Think of it like defusing a bomb. Cut the wires in the right order, and you've got a powerful tool. Cut them wrong, and everything explodes. Rexley had essentially given Meridian West instructions that said, cut whatever wire looks prettiest. My analysis grew into a comprehensive counter-proposal, not just pointing out what was wrong, but providing the right way forward. Each risk Rexley had deleted, I documented with real-world examples of similar failures. Remember when Technotrix implemented a similar system without safeguards? 30 million in losses, class action lawsuit, CEO in federal prison, that kind of thing. Sophie fed me intelligence from inside Meridian West. Rexley was getting desperate, pushing for signature before their due diligence was complete. He'd started bad-mouthing me to their board, claiming I was a disgruntled former employee spreading misinformation. He actually used the word hysterical. Sophie told me during one of our encrypted calls. Said you were emotional about being let go and might try to sabotage the deal. Emotional. Hysterical. The classic playbook for discrediting women. Too bad I wasn't playing by those rules anymore. The data told a different story. I created visualization models showing exactly how his implementation would cascade into failure. Week 1, minor inefficiencies. Month 1, system conflicts. Month 3, critical failures in supply chain. Month 6, complete operational breakdown. I backed every projection with mathematical certainty, the kind of evidence that would make even the most optimistic board member sweat. But the real ammunition came from an unexpected source. Jennifer, my old colleague from legal, reached out through LinkedIn with a cryptic message, "Check your personal email," from a friend who believes in documentation. The attachment was a goldmine. Jennifer had been quietly recording meetings, legal under our state's one-party consent laws. And she'd captured the November meeting, the one where Rexley had said women couldn't close big deals, that we didn't have the balls for business. I've been documenting everything since he arrived. Her email explained, "I'm still trapped here, but you're not. Use this. Burn it all down." Now I had theft, fraud, and discrimination. The trifecta of corporate malfeasance. Sophie arranged for me to work with Meridian West's legal team, still anonymously. They were building a fortress of liability protection, and I was their architect. Every document went through their lawyers, sanitized of any fingerprints that could trace back to me. "We need something more," Sophie said during a late-night strategy session. "The board is still leaning towards signing. Rexley's promising them the moon, and they want to believe. Then we give them the sun," I replied, "and show them exactly how Rexley plans to fly them straight into it." I spent the next 72 hours creating what I called the reality check package. Side-by-side comparisons of Rexley's fiction versus my original design. Cost projections showing the real numbers, not just the implementation, but the inevitable fixes when things went wrong. Legal liability assessments that would make their insurance company weep. But the centerpiece was a simulation. Using Meridian West's actual operational data, which Sophie provided, I modeled both scenarios. The original Falcon protocol, implemented correctly, showed steady, sustainable improvement. Rexley's version, it looked like watching a Jenga tower collapse in slow motion. "This is beautiful," Sophie breathed when she saw it. "It's like watching a car crash in reverse. You can see exactly where every piece of shrapnel came from." The law firm's meeting room became our command center. Sophie would take video calls with the board while I fed her information real-time through secure chat. When Rexley made a claim, I'd fact-check it instantly. When he presented numbers, I'd show the real calculations. I was her invisible weapon, and he never saw me coming. "He's getting suspicious," Sophie warned after a particularly contentious call. Asking who's providing the counter-analysis. "Let him wonder," I said. "Paranoia is just the beginning of what he deserves." We scheduled the kill shot for the following Thursday. A full board meeting with both companies present. Rexley would present his final pitch, and then Sophie would present the truth, complete with documentation, evidence, and one very special surprise guest, me. "You sure you want to reveal yourself?" Sophie asked. "You could stay hidden. Let me deliver everything." I thought about 12 years of building my reputation, only to have it destroyed by a man who couldn't spell strategy without spell check. I thought about my cubicle by the printer, the boys' club meetings, the word hysterical being used to describe my professional concerns. "I want to see his face," I said. "I want him to know that the processing machine just processed his entire career into dust." Sophie's smile was vicious. "Then let's give you the entrance you deserve." The preparations for Thursday's meeting ran with military precision. Sophie orchestrated every detail while I remained the invisible architect of Rexley's downfall. Meridian West's legal team had reviewed everything 3 times, their chief counsel practically salivating at the ammunition we'd provided. "This isn't just contract violation," he'd said, studying the evidence. "This is potential criminal fraud. Knowingly selling a defective strategy while hiding critical safety documentation. That's wire fraud territory." Wire fraud. The words tasted like expensive wine. Sophie strategically leaked just enough concern to make Rexley sweat. She had her assistant mention additional due diligence requirements within earshot of Orion Apex's people. She pushed the meeting time twice, claiming scheduling conflicts that didn't exist. Each delay was calculated to increase his desperation. And desperate men make mistakes. Rexley started calling Sophie directly, bypassing protocol. His voicemails escalated from confident to concerned to barely concealed panic. "I assure you, everything in the proposal is thoroughly vetted," he insisted in one message Sophie played for me. His voice cracked on thoroughly. Meanwhile, I refined our counter-presentation to surgical sharpness. Every slide was a scalpel, designed to cut away his lies with mathematical precision. The simulation model now included a real-time demonstration. I could input any variable and show exactly how his plan would fail. It was bulletproof, because it was built on truth rather than ego. Sophie had IT set up the conference room for maximum impact. 3 screens, one for Rexley's presentation, one for our rebuttal, and one that would remain mysteriously dark until the perfect moment. The board members would sit facing all 3, unable to ignore the evidence when it appeared. "What about Orion Apex's CEO?" I asked during our final prep call. "Harrison Wright doesn't take public humiliation well. Harrison's already looking for exits," Sophie revealed. "My CEO golfs with him monthly. Apparently, Rexley's been promising impossible returns across multiple accounts. Harrison's starting to suspect he hired a liability. A liability. From golden boy to toxic asset in under 6 months. If I hadn't despised Rexley so thoroughly, I might have been impressed by his self-destruction." Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. I stood in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into the corporate world that had spit me out. But this time, I wouldn't be asking for a seat at the table. I'd be flipping the entire table over. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're planning something. Good. Make him bleed. M. Marcus. Even from inside Orion Apex's walls, my old colleague was cheering for my revenge. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzling, pathetic fallacy at its finest. I dressed carefully, my best suit, the one I'd worn to close the Singapore deal 2 years ago. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, with the subtle pinstripe that said, "I mean business," without screaming it. My war paint was minimal, but precise. This wasn't about looking pretty, it was about looking like the professional he'd claimed I wasn't. Sophie had arranged for me to enter through Meridian West's private entrance, avoiding the main lobby where Orion Apex's team would arrive. I'd be seated in a small room adjacent to the main conference room, able to watch everything on monitors until my moment came. The legal team will present first, Sophie explained as we did a final walkthrough. They'll raise concerns about documentation authenticity, then Rexley will defend his proposal. That's when I'll ask for a risk assessment from our independent consultant. And I walk in. You walk in. She squeezed my shoulder. You ready for this? I thought about every meeting where my voice had been ignored, every idea that had been stolen, every moment I'd been made to feel less than. I've been ready since the day he called me a processing machine. The Orion Apex team arrived 15 minutes early, Rexley leading the pack like a condemned man pretending he was heading to a coronation. Through the monitor, I watched him glad hand board members. His smile stretched so tight it looked painful. He kept checking his phone, dabbing sweat from his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. Harrison Wright was there too, seated at the far end like he wanted to be anywhere else. The CEO of Orion Apex looked tired, worn down by 6 months of Rexley's promises that were starting to smell like lies. The meeting began at exactly 10 a.m. Meridian West's CEO, James Chen, called everyone to order with the kind of authority that made rooms fall silent. "Gentlemen," he began, and I noticed Sophie's slight eye roll at the gendered address. "We're here to finalize what could be a transformative partnership. But first, our legal team has some questions about the documentation provided." The chief counsel stood, remote in hand. "Mr. Vaughn, can you explain the origin of the Falcon Protocol?" I leaned forward, watching Rexley's face on the high-definition monitor. The color drained from it so fast I could practically see his blood pressure dropping. "Of course," he stammered. "It's a proprietary strategy developed by our team over the past several months." "Interesting." The lawyer clicked his remote. The second screen illuminated, showing my original timestamp. "Because our analysis shows creation dates from 5 years ago." The room shifted. Board members leaned forward. Harrison Wright's face went from tired to alert. "That must be an error in the metadata." Rexley tried. "Digital timestamps can be unreliable." "Indeed they can." The lawyer agreed. "Which is why we had them verified by 3 independent forensic analysts." Click. New slide. The verification reports. Rexley's smile died completely. In the monitor, I could see his hands shaking as he gripped the table edge. The silence in the conference room was so complete I could hear Rexley's labored breathing through the audio feed. Every eye was locked on him as he scrambled for an explanation that wouldn't come. "Perhaps," Harrison Wright interjected, his voice carrying the weight of impending disaster. "You could explain these discrepancies, Rexley. There's been some confusion about the documentation process." Rexley stuttered. "Multiple versions were created." "Indeed there were." Sophie cut in smoothly. She stood, commanding the room with an ease Rexley could only dream of. "Which is why we brought in an independent consultant to analyze all versions. Someone with intimate knowledge of the Falcon Protocol's development." This was it. My moment. Sophie clicked her remote, and the third screen came alive with my original Falcon Protocol documentation, complete with my name, my warnings, my risk assessments that Rexley had surgically removed. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sophie announced. Please welcome our strategic consultant, Madeline Harper. I pushed open the door and walked into that conference room like I owned it. Because in that moment, I did. The reaction was instantaneous. Rexley's face went from pale to ghostly white to a fascinating shade of green. Harrison Wright's eyes widened in recognition. Several board members who knew my reputation sat up straighter. Hello, Rexley, I said, my voice carrying the kind of calm that comes from holding all the cards. Surprised to see me? You can't be here, he stammered. You were terminated. There's a non-compete. I'm not competing, I replied, taking my place at the presentation podium. I'm consulting. Specifically, I'm consulting about my own intellectual property that you attempted to sell to Meridian West after removing all safety protocols. I clicked to my first slide, a side-by-side comparison of the original versus Rexley's butchered version. Gentlemen, what Mr. Vaughn presented to you wasn't just stolen, it was deliberately sabotaged. Every warning I embedded, every risk mitigation strategy, every safeguard, deleted. The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other. Harrison Wright stood up, his face purple with rage, not at me, but at Rexley. Let me show you what would actually happen if you implemented Mr. Vaughn's version, I continued, pulling up the simulation. The model ran in real time, showing Meridian West's operations degrading week by week, system by system, until complete failure at month 6. This is slander, Rexley shouted, finally finding his voice. She's a disgruntled former employee. Speaking of which, Sophie interjected, we also have this. The audio from Jennifer's recording filled the room. Rexley's own voice, clear as crystal. Women can't close deals like this. You don't have the balls, literally or figuratively, to play hardball with the big boys. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. James Chen, Meridian West's CEO, stood slowly. Mr. Vaughn, are you telling me you fired Ms. Harper for being a woman, stole her work, and then tried to sell us a defective version that would have destroyed our company? That's not, I didn't. The context, I said, pulling up my final slide. Is that Mr. Vaughn has exposed both our companies to massive liability, securities fraud, intellectual property theft, discrimination lawsuits, and potential criminal charges for knowingly selling defective strategic planning. I turned to address the room directly. The original Falcon protocol works, I designed it, I tested it, and when properly implemented with all safeguards, it delivers everything Mr. Vaughn promised. I'm prepared to consult on its proper implementation, directly with Meridian West. This is corporate espionage. Rexley was standing now, pointing at me with a shaking finger. She's stealing clients. I'm recovering stolen property, I corrected. And Meridian West isn't Orion Apex's client yet. In fact, given what we've discovered, I doubt they ever will be. Harrison Wright moved toward Rexley with the slow, deliberate pace of an executioner. Pack your things. Security will escort you out. You can't. I can, and I am. Harrison's voice was ice. You've exposed this company to lawsuits that could destroy us. You're done. Rexley looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, finding none. His team members avoided eye contact. The board members stared at him with disgust. Even the assistant taking minutes had stopped typing to watch his downfall. Madeline, James Chen addressed me directly. Would you be available to discuss a consulting arrangement? We'd like to implement the Falcon protocol, the real version, with your guidance. I'd be delighted, I replied, not breaking eye contact with Rexley. My rate is $5,000 per day, plus performance bonuses tied to successful implementation milestones. Done. The word hit Rexley like a physical blow. He grabbed his laptop, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. As security appeared at the door, Brad's cousin, in a beautiful twist of karma, Rexley turned to me one last time. You destroyed me, he whispered. No, I replied calmly. You destroyed yourself. I just provided the documentation. As security led him out, his footsteps echoing in the hallway like a funeral march, Sophie started a slow clap. Others joined in, until the conference room filled with applause. But I wasn't done yet. The contract with Meridian West was signed within the hour. $120 million, with my consulting fee guaranteed regardless of Orion Apex's involvement. Sophie had their legal team draw it up while Rexley was still being escorted through the building, his career disintegrating with each step toward the exit. I stayed to answer the board's questions, each response another nail in Rexley's professional coffin. Yes, there were other instances of stolen work. No, this wasn't an isolated incident. Yes, I had documentation of systematic discrimination. By the time I finished, Harrison Wright looked ready to personally throw Rexley off the roof. "We'll need to audit everything he touched," Harrison said wearily. "Every account, every proposal, every project. I recommend starting with the Morrison Industries pitch," I suggested helpfully. He was planning to present my work to them next week. Harrison's face went even paler. "We'll be in touch about a consulting arrangement for that as well." 2 consulting contracts in one day. Not bad for a processing machine. As the meeting concluded and executives filed out, Sophie walked me to the elevator. "You know he's finished in this industry, right? After this gets out, and it will get out, no one will touch him." "Good," I said simply. We reached the parking garage, and Sophie laughed. Really laughed for the first time that day. "You want to see something beautiful?" She led me to the executive parking section. There, in the spot marked "Reserved for Orion Apex Senior Management," sat Rexley's Porsche. Except it wasn't alone. A tow truck was hooking it up, the driver checking paperwork on his clipboard. "Company car," Sophie explained. Harrison had it reported as stolen property the moment Rexley was terminated. But that wasn't the beautiful part. Rexley stood next to the vehicle, still clutching his pathetic box of office supplies, watching his status symbol get dragged away. His suit was disheveled, his perfect hair mussed, his whole carefully constructed image crumbling like wet cardboard. Then, he saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the garage. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows that made him look older, smaller, defeated. I could have said something cutting. Could have twisted the knife one more time. Could have reminded him that women actually could close the big deals like the one I just signed at his expense. Instead, I simply smiled and pulled out my car keys. My sensible Honda Accord chirped as I unlocked it, and I climbed in without a word. As I started the engine, I watched in my rearview mirror as Rexley tried to argue with the tow truck driver. The man just shrugged and kept working. Rexley's phone rang, probably his wife, wondering why their credit cards had been frozen. Company cards, all of them. I pulled forward, then stopped right beside him, lowered my window. "Hey, Rexley," I called out. He looked at me with eyes that had lost all their arrogance, all their swagger, all their assumed superiority. "I told you," I said calmly. "When one door closes, sometimes you burn down the whole fucking building." I drove away, leaving him standing in the garage with his box of worthless mementos, watching his car disappear around the corner. In my rearview mirror, he grew smaller and smaller until he was nothing at all. My phone buzzed at the first red light, a text from Jennifer. "Heard the news. The whole office is celebrating. Marcus bought champagne. Also, Rexley's parking spot has already been reassigned to the new female head of operations. Karma's a beautiful bitch." Yes. Yes. She is. I pulled into a different parking garage, the one attached to Meridian West's building. The attendant smiled and handed me a card. "Ms. Harper? Ms. Durant said you'd be arriving. Your spot is P1 to 42, executive level." Executive level. Corner spot, right next to Sophie's. As I parked, I noticed the plaque already installed. M. Harper, strategic consultant. They'd had it ready. Sophie had known I'd win. She'd had my parking spot prepared before the meeting even started. I sat in my car for a moment, engine off, just breathing. 6 months ago, I'd had a corner office, respect, and a career I'd built over 12 years. Rexley had taken all of that But in trying to steal my work, he'd given me something better. The chance to prove that competence always wins over confidence. That truth eventually conquers lies. And that sometimes, the best revenge isn't just success. It's watching your enemy lose everything while you gain it all. My phone rang. Sophie. "There's champagne in your new office," she said. 32nd floor, corner suite, the one with the best view in the building. "Let me guess," I said, already smiling. "It faces Orion Apex's building. Every single window. You can probably see Rexley's old office from there. Well, someone else's office now." I locked my car and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. I looked good, vindicated, victorious, alive. The processing machine had processed her last revenge, and it had been absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice served cold. I'm curious to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of workplace karma, please subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed or experienced similar workplace injustice? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the best revenge truly is massive success.